Arc 5, Chapter 60. One ending, one battle. The sight of a white light. Warm, soft, a light which reassured one's heart. To greet the morning with such a serene mood had been absent for far too long. Always waking in despair, in never-ending every days that were as nightmares, there had never been a trace of peace. Gradually coming to firmly believe that for always and always, this darkness would never usher in the morning sun. Precisely because of this was perhaps why this ray was so refreshing.
Hey, wake up.
She heard someone's voice. Beyond the white light, someone was calling for her. Guided by that voice like so, led by the hand like so, she departed from this darkness. That white light glimpsed in the distance, finally engulfed her vision completely.
Good morning. No matter how much of a sleepyhead you are, it's about time to wake up, you know.
Opening her eyes and gazing over, a shy, silver-haired maiden smiled as she spoke such words. Those words made Sylphie's cheeks become stained with tears. Cerulean light flooded the sky as the enchantment of ice lifted. The ice that had engulfed the half-demolished church gradually turned to light, and the scattering mana that enveloped the microspirits disappeared. The sight of one unfathomable fantasy being overtaken by another unfathomable fantasy engraved a terribly agonizing sentiment in the hearts of the viewers. Although it would not be strange to be moved to tears by such a sight, the reason why they cried and wailed was certainly something greater than that. From what overtook their lives, from a nightmare which had bound the most brilliant and sparkling epoch of their lives, from that, they had been freed.
Speaking of which, Emilia Tanner's a pretty big shot.
Thoughtlessly loosening his lips, Subaru murmured absent-mindedly. In front of his eyes were Emilia, and the bride clinging onto her in tears. One of the ex-wives, in a healthy shape. The number of women in dresses were precisely 53, with not a single error in counting.
When I informed her that his wives had assimilated his heart, I thought there wouldn't be a way to save the brides without having them die.
Taking away the lives of the brides, rendering Lion's Heart without a place to be in. Subaru had partly, seriously given up on there being another way to stop that abhorrent man. He had been prepared for sacrifices. However, unlike Subaru, Emilia had not given up. It was true that during the fierce and life-risking skirmish against Regulus, his thinking had come to a standstill, believing there to be no other choice. However, Emilia did not stop thinking. With the cards she held, and considering what all would be possible for her, she had made her move. Which was why...
This time, Emilia Tan completely carried us, huh?
It's not like that.
Letting out an exhausted sigh, next to the wall, Subaru remarked on his own vanquish. Hearing his relieved exhale, Emilia came back to him. Her white dress was torn, and her silver hair, which had overcome the struggle for life and death, was disheveled. Even still, after the fight had ended, Emilia looked beautiful. Inhaling with that in his mind, Subaru jerked his chin.
Those people, they still have expressions full of dissatisfaction that fail to sufficiently express their gratitude towards Emilia, you know.
Stop poking fun at this. And I'm incapable of saying anything grand to them. Even if only for a brief while. The choice of dying was forced upon them.
But there isn't anyone who died. Everyone's still alive. This point's more important than anything else.
This result, it was the most perfect possible. Having found the answer he was seeking, Subaru felt relieved. Emilia placed her hands on her hips, and raised her voice as she spoke to Subaru, who was still regarding himself too lowly and thus putting himself down.
Wounded all over, forcing yourself despite that. If Subaru hadn't worked so hard, everyone wouldn't have made it so far. Lion's heart, too, was all thanks to Subaru's noticing it.
Lacking a trump card is the usual thing. That being said, something did feel off all along. But thank goodness you noticed it. Freezing the wives to place them into a death trance.
I too was frozen for a bit too long.
Emilia stuck her tongue out with that kind of feeling. Adorable. Although, for some reason, it didn't seem like content to be discussed while laughing. Nonetheless, Emilia's actions and keenness had yielded the greatest effectiveness to strike down Regulus without unnecessary sacrifice. 53 lives, those of the precious wives, had been saved.
Though, as for whether or not I could do it, I was lacking a bit in confidence.
But still, you did it. Emilia-tan, you worked hard to improve your own skill and strength.
But the possibility that they would stay frozen like this also existed. To free everyone perfectly like this is what finally allows me to relax.
Then, as if to hide her shy smile, she touched her chest. Underneath the palm of that hand was seemingly to confirm that there remained only her pulse and heartbeat.
In addition, if Subaru hadn't removed Regulus's heart from my chest, I would have needed to use the same magic on myself. In that case, whether for Sylvie and the others, or myself, I think it'd be really worse than melting like this, because then it could have been taken another 100 years.
That again, isn't that an exaggeration no matter how you look at it? So this isn't an exaggeration? Or worse? Isn't this completely unparalleled extremism?
Watching Emilia as she smiled bitterly and silently, Subaru felt a sharp shock. Due to Regulus's provocation, Emilia had wanted to stop Lionheart's effect on her. If an eye had not been kept on her, if the situation had not been mishandled, then perhaps Emilia would have parted from this life. Of course, notions of searching everywhere for a way to melt the ice to avoid that would still exist in his mind.
Something like 2 sleeping beauties. This pestilent god truly isn't ordinary. Please give me your forgiveness.
Although complaining, Subaru's heart had settled down. In any case, Emilia had been rescued and was safe and sound, and the wives had been freed without harm. Although the battle against Regulus had yielded a scale of destruction beyond what one opponent seemed capable of, in summary, their side had sustained more or less no loss. Even so, Subaru's flesh carried all kinds of burdens, as well as an unnecessary connection with the witch cult. And in addition...
Reinhard left without even treating his wounds. I wonder if he'll be okay.
To Subaru, who had been lost in thought, Emilia suddenly spoke. Subaru raised his head and gave a wave of his hand.
Oh, it'll be fine. Even if that guy leaves his wounds as they are, the microspirits will come along and treat them. He himself said so.
Ah, makes sense. Originally, there had been quite a number of the microspirits here, but as soon as Reinhard left, everyone went too. Reinhard perhaps has the aptitude to potentially be a spiritual arts user.
My niece would be completely killed, so that can't be!
As for Reinhard's circumstances, even without anything like that, he was strong enough. Although the one who had handed off Regulus to Reinhard had been Subaru himself, Reinhard's manner of battle in that final, indistinguishable duel could only be described coldly in one phrase. Could a human leap with such ease above the clouds? Even if he couldn't at all be classified as human, Reinhard was a knight under a candidate of the royal selection, much like himself.
Emilia-san, weak though I may be, please don't cast me away.
I am especially dependent on Subaru, though.
Is that right? That's right! From now on to the future, I'll also work my hardest.
Apologies. Your sudden rush forward of hard work is a bit confusing.
In any case, best to stop comparing this to that. To do so would be doing the same as Regulus, who could not act with peace of mind without using others as a point of reference. Though he had always been thought of as a man without qualities to be admired, but unexpectedly, treating him as a frame of negative reference worked out just fine.
Everyone else, are they okay?
That's what Reinhard is for. In all honesty, everyone else is stronger than me.
To entrust to one another, or rather, for one to rely on the other, the awkward expression known as faith would be the most suiting. Despite being in different factions, who would one day come to face each other in the struggle for the throne, Subaru still believed in them, even with the variance of personalities, abilities, and beliefs. At least, he would believe that they would not lose to those despicable, hopeless guys in the witch cult. Moreover, if anyone failed, if the lives of anyone who mattered was in jeopardy, that was to say, Subaru needed to consider using return by death. Even if the contract with Roswell did not exist, as long as there remained any slight chance of salvation, they would certainly be saved. He hated pain and suffering, but tragedies were surely even more worthy of his disgust.
Subaru?
Unknowing of what Subaru was seeing as he considered the possibility of death, Emilia sat down next to Subaru. Her body rested against his left shoulder as she gently stroked his lowered head. Tickled, but it was hard to part with.
Emilia-tan?
Right now, I share the same feelings as Subaru. Although, I'm worried about everyone. My own strength is spent. Even reaching out a hand is impossible. So, me too. Allow me to pray with Subaru, in hope that everyone will be safe and sound. Certainly, there won't be any problems, because they're all really strong, really smart, and really hard workers compared to us.
In order to reassure Subaru, Emilia carefully considered her choice of words. Her use of phrasing sounded especially of her, and Subaru too was able to relax. Faith. To have faith in everyone. And Reinhard, who had already set off. Immediately upon defeating Regulus, Reinhard had left to help their compatriots. A battlefield with him present would not be any cause for concern. Without losing even a single person, they wished to welcome the coming morning. In that case, capturing Subaru's worry was only one remaining issue. Alongside Subaru, who looked toward the sky as if in prayer, Emilia as well looked through the ceiling of the demolished church to regard the night sky. As if to prevent Emilia from seeing, Subaru tightly grasped his chest. Alongside the moment of Regulus's death, it had felt as if something, formless and black, had slid into his own chest, pulsating. That was surely the same thing that had happened with Beetlejuice back then. So he would, in order to keep Emilia from noticing, merely keep quiet. Praying to the heavens, preparing himself, merely keep quiet. Time turned back to just a little before Regulus had been defeated. Half an hour prior, after Subaru and the others had left for the control towers, and after Otto, who had seen them off, had left in order to recover the Book of Wisdom. That was when Otto and Felt had encountered Gluttony and had begun to fight. Was when Garfiel and Kurgan had just landed in the canal. Was when Wilhelm had unveiled Teresia's cloak. Was when Julius had frowned upon hearing discourse of a grudge that he could not remember. was when the church where the bride who was being forced into marriage in a farce of a wedding had been half destroyed, was when the waterways to the city's north had suddenly ignited at once, was when the city hall, with only non-combatants left inside, was attacked.
Time for this lovely lady's debut!
On the topmost floor of the city hall that stood 5 stories tall, a tremendous force shattered walls without any room for resistance. The tremendous vibration shattered the architecture's windows, and, combined with the damage to the building's foundations that had happened during the day, it now caused lethal damage. Pristella's City Hall, a building which had once been the city's center, had, in the space of a mere single day, turned to the verge of ruin, nary a trace of its former glory left. However, whether the curtain would close with it only on the verge of ruin was dependent on what would happen here, would be decided based on the result.
4 towers corresponding to 4 gates. No matter which one opens, the city will indeed be flooded. To not gamble on the possibility of retaking all the towers wouldn't do. Even if you rotten meats don't like it, you'd still need to dispense your forces and wage out war, right?
Long-windedly, a voice which was an assault to the ears described the immediate circumstances of the city. And then, echoing were voices opposite to this.
Be certain to survive, to protect this city!
Using our strength, let's take back this beautiful scenery of our city.
We who stand with justice couldn't possibly lose.
Paid with good, and evil is paid with evil. This battle will be the victory we await. The stern voice of a young man. The brave voice of a young woman. A cry of a stern voice from a male soldier, which tangibly felt like that of a veteran. A cry of rational naivety from a young woman, cheering everyone on. In any case, only the innocence of these unrelenting and unashamed wills improved these unyielding lines of discourse. Only the mouth which discussed this was only a single one.
How are you so unwilling to just think the slightest bit?
Then, from the same mouth which had spoken these effective words, as if betraying all the preceding remarks, insulting and taunting, a voice, so rooted in malice as to be devoid of even conscious malicious intent of smearing them away, spoke thus. And then, the owner of the voice hugged her own petite frame as if seeing something disgusting, shaking her shoulders back and forth.
Stop! Please don't do this! Why? Does this lovely lady have no choice but to get this? Justice that exudes the same stench as soil and sweat? You rotten meats! All you gather together so your brains can boil beautifully?
Raising her voice high, producing a laugh piercing as a clamor. Without the capability of hiding, without even the intent of hiding its malice was this voice, its source a young girl who had yet to blossom into maturity. Wide round eyes and delicate thin lips, blonde hair riding to her shoulders and faintly reddened cheeks, as if taking the form of the concept of cuteness. That face appeared inconsistent with the young girl's luster and fierceness. Clad in pieces of cloth which were practically just lingerie, forget being a woman. For a young maiden whose human body's characteristics had yet to develop, this outfit was far too exposed. Any normal human who gazed upon this would hold a twisting sense of aversion. The terrifying young girl, or rather, the monster's purpose, lay here. A Sin Archbishop of the witch cult, representing lust, Capella Emeralda Lugunica, a monster whose purpose was to ridicule the morals and dignity of humanity as exceedingly as possible, was present.
That you would delusionally believe this lovely lady would be following decorum and obediently wait in the tower is practically incomprehensible! incomprehensible! Being kind to the point of allowing you to pass these days is already charity! What is called battle is about not knowing the opponent to do as they like, and then to do precisely that they don't want you to. This kind of principle is understood even by flowers in the greenhouse. You trash meats!
In the midst of these coarse words of unbearable ridicule was the monster that was only cute in appearance, Capella. Using fingers to poke at her cheeks while twisting her body was this monster, who resumed human form immediately upon successfully infiltrating the city hall and entering a nearby room. Meeting Capella was a cat-eared knight who had been immersed in her abusive words earlier. There was, too, a long-haired woman lying on the bed behind him. Here was the uppermost floor of the hall, on which was the room that the master-servant duo of Ferris and Crush occupied.
You are the Sin Archbishop of Lust!
Ferris cried out with a voice trembling with rage, glaring at Capella as he protected the bed. Capella tilted her head at Ferris's glare, then looked toward the bed behind him before nodding with an expression of acceptance.
Ah, okay. Your resentment is understandable. She did, in fact, lose to the blood. From the start, I thought I shouldn't have worked. Even though I believe that, actually seeing this failure is disappointing indeed. The most noble Lagunican blood misled me to have just the slightest bit of expectation.
For what purpose would you force something like this onto Crush-sama? What has to be done to save Crush-sama? Answer me!
Towards Capella, who sighed with something more like listlessness than disappointment. Ferris's cute face was dyed red in anger as he screamed. Wielded by his two hands was the soldier's short sword he had been carrying until now. That sword had been engraved with ornate decorations and the emblem of a lion, more akin to a first-class ornament of favor than a weapon of combat. Aligning with Ferris's own immature skills, it lacked the ability to make effective attacks.
Is that a toy? An important gift? No matter which. Using your frail arms to weigh something like this is pretty dangerous. Little girl? No?
Capella, who had stuck out her tongue to jeer, cut her words off midway with a sudden frown.
Ugh! Disgusting! You have a pretty unnatural body. Clearly a man, but that body... Something that shouldn't have been removed wasn't, so how? Did you become like that? From a glance, it's fundamentally different from those perverts who dress in women's clothing. Even this lovely lady is put off.
Not only did she see through Ferris's gender, but Capella also showed disgust at his unnaturalness. The monster carefully examined Ferris from top to bottom, making a deliberate gesture.
That manner of dress, is it to seduce other men? In any case, all it's worth is bringing understanding to the pointlessness of humans. Men are fools, women are all sluts, and humankind to go all together is utter trash. It's what a lovely lady concluded from her preferences.
How noisy! Stop with the useless... Answer my question already! What exactly did you do to Crush-sama?
Ah, truly, how truly annoying.
Towards Capella, with whom he had yet to establish dialogue, Ferris once again let out a roar of rage, unable to bear the ridicule. Capella relaxed her shoulders upon having heard it, and, after a moment, the visage of the young girl dissolved away. Before Ferris, who took a stunned inhale, the young girl's body began to dissolve and reform. Short stature elongating as if a nightmare, bright golden hair beginning to change in color, the temptingly sweet face that would provoke a desire to protect on anyone upon sight became stern, and the lingerie-like clothing transformed into an indigo dress. Although he had been informed about it, this was still the first time this process of variation and change appeared before Ferris, creating nightmares, transforming the bodies of that which it touched into whatever it so wished, both itself and others. And then, being faced with the manifestation of this nightmare, Ferris was frozen with shock.
What's there to be surprised about?
Speaking those words, caressing long green hair, was the face Ferris cherished most. The figure of Capella, who now stood before him motionlessly, had become the very appearance of Ferris's most beloved master. This made Ferris's face turn stark white, and even the hand holding the short sword had begun to tremble slightly.
Look here. The ferocity from earlier has completely vanished. This face, this body, this voice have become like before your very eyes now.
Crucia's face laughed, something he had never seen before, and slowly, Capella strode forward. She reached Ferris's side, stopped upon reaching a distance where she could touch him if she stretched out a hand. As if thinking of something, she pointed the short sword Ferris was holding to her own chest. The tip of the sword rested right at the center of Crucia's large bosom. Leaning just slightly forward would have it pierce through. That was the position it was in.
Your despised enemy is right before you. Avenge me. It hurts, it hurts. Even breathing brings me anguish. I can't open my eyes. Flowing through my chest isn't blood. Flowing through my entire body is something that feels like poison. So hurry! Avenge me! That's what she's saying, you know. Plunge the blade with one breath. Stir the wounds around as you will and yank it out in one breath as well. Then the heart will be destroyed, the arteries will be severed, and the blood will spurt forward constantly. You can kill her.
Ferris's breaths began to grow too rapid. His gaze began to wander. More prized than gold, the life of his master's enemy was being offered right before his very eyes. Just as she said, an attack like this could truly be effective. He could destroy her heart. He could kill her. However, precisely because she wore that too familiar face.
Stab, 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 stab! Stab!
Commanded as if by malediction, Ferris's short sword punctured that chest. The blade pierced that body with ease, reaching between bones to destroy the heart within. With a twist of the keen blade came the ruthless sound of muscle being severed, and finally, along with the blood that squirted forth, the short sword was yanked out. Ferris tried to avoid being stained by the gushing blood, backing away with uneven breaths. The short sword slipped from his hands to the ground, being splashed on by the blood dripping upon the floor. And then Capella, who had been stabbed in the chest, knelt on the ground, spitting vast quantities of blood from her mouth. In appearance, she still wore Crucia's face, her own pained face stained with blood, amber eyes filled with disbelief fixed on Ferris.
Hurts. It hurts. Why do something like...
It was you who made me stab, made me injure Kusama.
It's painful, so painful. It's too much, unforgivable. The way it's spoken, things like liking you, loving you. We clearly loved each other.
Don't say such ridiculous things. I don't share that kind of relationship with Kusama.
Is that so? In that case, the interpretation of the script itself was off.
With a frank expression, Capella used a sleeve to wipe the blood from her face while standing. She casually brushed the wound on her chest, and the fresh wound disappeared in an instant. The twisted expression of agony from before disappeared as well, leaving only a sigh.
Indeed. If you're going to play around like this, it's meaningless if it's not done from the very beginning, right? Something like that? A master and a vassal who love each other, and this lovely lady who looks like one of them, and forces one to kill the other? And then to unfold the Carthrus of love. That was what's been planned originally. A failure. Failure indeed.
Putting on such a farce. Just what do you intend? What do you want from us?
Nothing much. There isn't much intent behind it. Nor is there anything really to ask of you. Watching a husband kill his wife is something to kill time. I was just wondering if having a knife by one side, all dressed up as a woman, such as a hobby, in such a relationship.
My promise with Kusama isn't anything superficial like that.
I mean, things like fetishes and sexuality on the surface like that is nothing this lovely lady finds rather frivolous, you know.
Regarding Ferris, who could not help but cry out, Capella tilted her head as she spoke. Then Capella raised her right hand, and her external form once again changed drastically. Her palm becoming like a flower's giant petal, the tentacles that stretched forth sent Ferris's body flying, before entangling him as they lifted him up, then tightened their grip as they slammed him against a wall.
It's the same whether I see it or feel it. What a body, both so slim and fragile. If you want to become a woman so badly, how about this lovely lady lends you a hand? And this lovely lady's hands, it'd only be child's play. How about getting it removed and forming your holes in minutes?
My body's irrelevant. More important, it's what Kusama is.
How ridiculous! Something like vaulting another over yourself? How about you stop audaciously saying sweet nothings? And speaking of which, you're asking to recover a body infected by the blood of its original state? Ha! If such a method exists, it should be said that this lovely lady would be more eager to know.
Tentacle continued to writhe forcefully, causing the blood in Ferris's delicate extremities to begin seizing. Widening his eyes in agony, the sound of twisting broken bones echoed throughout the room. In comparison to the right hand, which had taken the form of a carnivorous flower, the raised left hand took the shape of a scythe of a mantis. Maintaining Crucia's face, she had become a repulsive monster whose left hand was an insect's and right hand was a flower. Even so, that face bore no trace of change, all the more horrid for remaining adorned in beauty.
Directly turning you into mincemeat would also be pretty entertaining. And this lovely lady doesn't have much time to spare anyway. Before any unrelated others can appear, it wouldn't do not to take care of you and your master. That said, you people are really foolish beyond limit. Without expecting this lovely lady to show up here, even a strategy for counterattack is sluggish. Just what point will it come to before?
Having said this, Capella's once delighted face was now tinged with a touch of a frown. As if holding doubts regarding what she had just said, she dragged Ferris, still gasping for breath, before her.
No matter what, isn't this a bit too slow? Even given that this lovely lady infiltrated from above, isn't taking long for any others to arrive on this upper floor? You've been planning something. Hurry up and revealing everything is for your own good, you know. Otherwise, your most treasured Master Sama will undergo even uglier transformation.
Capella's scythe, which extended from her left wrist, was pointed at Crush, who lay on the bed, and Ferris was forced to make an incomparably cruel choice. Serving as a response to this question was Ferris's shaking voice that he squeezed out.
You.
Which way of begging for mercy will you?
You utterly useless creature.
Huh?
Yellow pupils bearing disgust glared at Capella, a sentence uttered as if spat. Immediately afterward, the tentacles that bound Ferris began to spout smoke, and the petals discolored and rotted away. Regarding her own right arm that had been corroded away, Capella revealed an expression of surprise.
Ada. Just what happened to this lovely lady's hand?
Well, just think of it like scummy personalities not being unique to your side.
The tentacles rotted away, and Ferris's body was freed. Another sound overrode that of Capella, her head turning. That was a cute voice with a unique cadence. Capella looked in the direction of the bed, from which that sound had been issued. At the very moment, light flooded the entire room, practically creating the effect of instantaneously spiking temperature, was a white ray. This energetic beam burned away at Capella's face, destroying the entire left half of her face. Accompanying the carbonization of half of her face was the stench of scorched flesh, and Capella retreated several steps, then reaching out a serpentine tongue to caress the surface of that wound. She smiled.
It's the face of one of your own allies. And you should not even a trace of leniency, huh? Well, not like this, and to an effect. The presence of someone here is well unexpected, so it's not a huge surprise that it ended up like this.
And allies misunderstand it. We're commercial competitors. Nah, more like competitive opponents. Moreover, not like we're living such easy lives that we'd hesitate to attack, even if we're seeing the face of an opponent.
A conditional ally will sooner or later become an enemy. In that case, was especially aiming the face of some deliberate preemptive scheme? If that's the case, your personality might be a little too twisted too.
I told you, there wasn't any such mixing of business and personal stuff. Aiming at the head was purely to see if destroying it proved fatal. Hoping so for a moment, that's all.
Saying so, the person who clambered from the bed gave a sigh of betrayed expectations. In place of Krush, lying on the bed had been Anastasia. She touched her own wavy hair colored with green dye, responding with a slight smile to Capella, who had survived with even half her face scorched off.
Though I really hoped for it, seems like you didn't die.
Even though it might be different from the type of woman who only smiles upon seeing money. But something like this unhesitatingly scorching half face of a woman, a personality surpassing a reasonable amount of self-interest. You truly are a female meat that this lovely lady would love to take an interest in.
You take an interest in us? Even us here'd feel a bit of resistance. You see, I've decided my taste's the type with long fur that feels silky to the touch.
Boldly, Anastasia responded to the monster Capella's words with frankness. With a small cough, she approached Ferris, who was near the bed, taking his wrist and helping him up. Watching the teary-eyed Ferris, Anastasia spoke with, "Is this enough as a precursor?"
Mango, I just can't hear your audio.
Sorry. Hang on, just a sec. Sorry. No information's been gathered at all. At the very least, let's set Krush's affair aside for now.
I understand. You've accompanied me so far already in such a risky gamble.
We hold a rather large share of the responsibility for this whole deal, so let's just call it that.
Even the ability of Ferris, the pinnacle of healers in the kingdom, could do nothing to heal the current Krush. To save her, there was no other way aside from finding what had caused it, as well as the solution from the one responsible. As for what Ferris had proposed, Anastasia could not refuse. Inviting each candidate to the city of Pristella had been Anastasia's doing, and then the situation had escalated to such an extent. Because she was partially accountable for the matter, Anastasia had been unable to refute Ferris's plea.
Pointing to say that it's been completely fruitless despite going so far.
To be burdened by expectation like so, my deepest apologies. But these feelings are truly completely absent. But there shouldn't have been any guarantee that I'd show up at all.
Wasn't there an announcement from Natsuki-kun? Seems that you would have reacted upon hearing that.
Sending the main combative force away, leaving the base camp undefended would surely prompt activity from the enemy. In the first place, the witch cult had no obligation to greet them with integrity. Truly, this was just as per the contents of Capella's earlier speech.
Natsu-kun grew naive at a critical moment here.
Although in no way was there a possibility of a guarantee. Strictly considering the nature of the Sin Archbishops, the ones to show up and attack could only be one of either wrath or lust. So, Anastasia had laid a trap and allowed the city hall to be attacked. The real Krush had, of course, been evacuated to a nearby shelter with the other injured. There would, of course, be no one who would step into this uppermost floor. People still remaining in this building, aside from those on the topmost floor.
People whose minds move a little too quickly are just the slightest bit irritating to others. But then, aren't you underestimating this lovely lady? That cat ear's over there, and this little lady over here. Neither looks like someone who can hold her own in battle.
Called ladies rather embarrassing. Though I may look like this, I'm technically a grown adult.
At Capella's remarks, Anastasia winked in response.
It's been decided. That lovely face of yours is all that will remain after everything below your neck becomes a locust. After that happens, let's see if you can still talk with that rude mouth of yours. Shall we?
In that case, best bid farewell for now.
Anastasia's refusal surprised Capella, the threatening party. Anastasia tugged on her hair that was green still, and glanced about the room.
We here should have mentioned already, but we've been awaiting you all along. In that case, we couldn't have been waiting without making any preparations.
Immediately after making that statement, Anastasia rapped gently against the floor with her fingers. 2 ringing sounds, as if some kind of signal, and immediately afterward, cracks appeared in the floor by Capella's feet, and the broken body of the young girl plummeted downward.
Oh my!
The bottom of the floor fell away, and appearing in the floor she had plummeted to was a similar opening. In this manner, Capella continued to fall floor by floor, falling the height of 4 stories in one breath, landing in an underground chamber beneath the first floor. With the sound of a splatter, Capella's body exploded. Defenselessly slamming into the ground, the body of the young girl was completely flattened on the cold surface. Blood gushed forth from her face, and her limbs were folded over and broken with a miserable appearance. But the body that had become a piece of flesh immediately began sluggishly moving its limbs, and the young girl's body changed shape like an aqueous, amorphous entity, and stood up. Appearing there was the figure of a seductive woman, clad in extremely revealing clothing, displaying her ample flesh without a trace of shame, with the rare sight of black hair woven into a 3-stranded braid, exuding a somewhat dangerous aura and a beauty that caused restlessness to all those who gazed upon it. Whether Ferris or Anastasia, both should have no idea who this appearance belonged to. In the first place, the 2 that remained on the 4th floor should not have been able to see her transformation. And so, there should have been no one who would react with surprise upon seeing this figure.
Really? Isn't this just going to make me so very delighted? So very excited?
With the manner of an agonized death, and a manner that could not feel agony, Capella let go of her voice. A frivolous sound, incongruent with her mutated appearance, echoed throughout the entire underground chamber of the city hall. Shadowy, its air both cold and humid. This was not merely the landscape of a basement, but part of the numerous waterways distributed throughout the city, part of the management facilities used to maintain these waterways. From somewhere came the sound of rushing water, and from somewhere else overhead, a breeze blew by.
Receiving such a warm welcome and whatnot. This lovely lady's so excited to allow herself to freely change the size of her chest, to return and embrace them tight, to have them rectify their upbringing from where this lovely lady's arms, to have them never love anything aside from this lovely lady.
Can't return.
Huh?
Cheeks dyed crimson, Capella, exhilarated to the point of trembling, was barred by someone unknown. Sounding out was a deep voice, a man's voice, muffled and sulking. As she heard this voice, Capella raised her head, and from the shadows underground emerged a person's figure. Upon seeing him, her expression suddenly changed completely. The ecstatic expression that had been on her face until now immediately contorted to one of loathing as she glared at her opponent.
By this lovely lady's aesthetic values, those most intolerable are the ones who hide their ugliness, aren't they?
I see. Rest easy. By my aesthetic values, your feelings cannot be tolerated either.
Responding to Capella with an apathetic manner, heaving a sigh as if something were weighing him down. And then...
Shouldn't you have heard it up there? Your actions were seen through by that wicked one on our side. Which is to say, in terms of wickedness, how could you hope to triumph against the princess?
As he spoke, alongside the bass of his voice, was heard the sound of a drawn scabbard. The sword attached behind his side had been drawn from its sheath, and sluggish light reflected onto it from the hole overhead. Standing there was a man with one arm, was a shadow clad in a black helmet, was an eccentrically dressed, strange man. The stranger facing Capella pointed the blue dragon sword held by his singular arm towards her.
Though I've only just greeted you, I'm in a terrible mood today. Before I die, hurry up and get the fuck out of here, mollusk.